Now Smith has it. DeMoss, the steal for three. Buried! Joey DeMoss. Far side. Timmons blocked again. Daly, top of the key, spinning. Daly up and one. What a play. Position Epps to Valentine. Yes, sir. Mackay with another. Corrado left block up and one. B Graphics up by one, now down by two. It's Davis again. Zion again. He cannot miss. Now it's Terza for the lead. Got it. Picked off. That's RJ Sledge. Sledge pulls up. Sledge and one. RJ Sledge, incredible.
Welcome into episode number 93 of the Valley Sports Guys podcast, live here from His Place Coffee Community and more in Monessen. I'm Jose Negron, joined by Jeremy Salou and Alex Lyons here on this beautiful Wednesday. A little cold outside, but expect that with December weather. But
it's a lot cooler than the EF gym was last night, I'll tell you that.
And a lot cooler outside than it is here in the coffee shop. We've talked about how warm it can get in here, but
still not as warm as the EF gym.
Still not as warm as the EF gym. I mean, that never changes. You kind of expect that.
Absolutely not.
But a lot to discuss. The fall sports season is wrapping up. It will be wrapped up this weekend with the state football championships, and the winter sports season has now begun. Got things started this past weekend at the MVI Shootout Classic over at Charleroi High School. 2 days of events Here's some drilling there.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if you
I'll
all heard that, but that was pretty distracting for a second. But MVI Shootout Classic, guys, 2 days of games, 4 games each night, and it really didn't disappoint. We had some really good matchups. I think all the teams were very appreciative of being able to start the season the way they did. But kind of your takeaways. What did you kind of take away from the weekend?
I'm tired.
Aside from that.
But offenses looked a little sluggish in these early games of the season, which I think kind of to be expected. I mean, a lot of teams just not finding that groove, trying to find life without whoever it may be. And, I think some teams surprised a little. I thought Ringgold played a lot better than I thought they were going to in this tournament. They got the win over Charleroi. I think they played Clareton very well in that game as well. Tolliver looked outstanding. Obviously, you like to see Berger and Prosser start to figure things out for TJ, but I think there's a lot to grow and build on for all these schools. And, it's going to be an exciting year, I think, of basketball. I think we have a lot of really good teams around the area, and it was put on display in those first 2 days of basketball season.
My takeaway? Well, I'm hungry.
Okay.
Because there's still no food in the hospitality room.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not knocking anybody. There was food in there, but the people that it was.
What did you think about the basketball, Jeremy?
Oh, sorry. I thought it was okay. I think it was a lot cleaner than it was last year that I noticed. I think the play was cleaner, with the exception of maybe the very, very first game, which it was McKeesport Clareton. Mm-hmm. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. I mean, I'd chalk it up to that, but I was pretty impressed with the play of Clareton. I thought did very well. I mean, they fell in that first game, the McKeesport, but I think Clareton showing they're going to be a team to be reckoned with in 2A. I was really impressed by Bell Vernon. They came with more than 7 players, so that's a start.
Definitely helps.
Jumping ahead to last night, they got a win over Steel Valley with that limited roster. With the football guys a little bit busy right now, but I was really impressed with the way they played against South Allegheny, who's one of the favorites in 4A.
And that was just in that game. That was the only kind of blemish, that unfortunate circumstance at the end there.
Yeah,
with Bell Vernon thinking they tied it. It was called a 2, and
right. again, that's on the scorekeeper there for putting it up on the board, but the referees made the right call. Watching it back, his toe was on the line, so it was called properly. The referee signaled properly, but the scorekeeper kind of, rushed it a little bit and put it up on the board. But other than that, I was, I think, Zion showed he's going to average 27, 30 points a game, this year, and he's going to be arguably the best player in the Valley. Other than that, I think, like you said, I think Ringgold was a little bit of a surprise, like you mentioned. Coach Berdovich got in there so late, but they played really well. He made the proper adjustments. They came back and, got the win against Charleroi. And then, Clairton kind of snuck back up on them, but I think they played really well.
They played two really good quarters in that game.
You got down, 20-9 in that game after one, something like that?
23-9, I think.
And they were able to take the lead in that game. So, that was an incredible sequence by them. But, of course, it's not the Clareton team you're going to see by the end of the year. Sir Anthony Blair played all of a minute 30, I think, in this shootout classic with that injury. But he's dynamic as well. But, that was impressive what Ringgold was able to do there.
I think the thing for Clareton, too, is, you get to see life without Devin Dean and Caden Smith. And those two were so instrumental in what they were able to accomplish last year. Mm-hmm. But you can see with guys like Deshaun Hines, who bounced back, had 9 points the first night, and then I think 25 and 12 or 25 and 11.
Something like that. It was in the 20s.
Yeah, he had a double-double against Ringgold and really led the way, especially down the stretch. And in that game, Ringgold, middle quarters were, they looked really, really good, and then kind of fell off down the stretch. Fatigue started to play a factor.
This is the best basketball I've ever seen Tolliver play, I'll tell you that. And just Aiden Angotti, who's expected to be big on that team, he was basically,
he struggled.
We didn't see him. It was like he wasn't even there,
Imagine what this team's going to look like when Angotti's starting to hit, his stride.
We know he can knock down some big shots.
We saw, Dungy really had a good weekend. We saw, what Caden Graber can do, sophomore who was injured a lot of last season. So Ringgold, there's talent there, and I think Shane Berdovich is going to try and get the most out of it, and I think Ringgold will be better than we.
The thing that hurts Ringgold all year is the fact that they're in that conference in 5A,
and kind of lacks a little bit of size too.
Right, but playing in that conference, it's hard to say where they're going to get their wins in that conference right now. Connellsville's not that great of a team, but. When you're going against the Peters Townships, the Bethel Parks, the TJs, that's a rough slate. But for a team like that, it's just you want to see improvement every game along the road. So we'll see what they do.
And they're relatively young too. I mean, if I'm mistaken, did they start a senior?
I don't think they did.
Because I think Suss and Tolliver are both juniors, and then a lot of freshmen and sophomores in there. With, Graber and guys like that coming off the bench, Dimitri Lowe, Braylon Lomax. So, that's a young team that has some talent. But, again, as you said, Jeremy, their biggest Achilles heel is absolutely where they're playing in.
Right, and it's not going to change next year. So, but looking ahead overall, I thought Charleroi was a perfect facility to have it. I like the way the gym was set up. I like the way that, I know.
Check.
I know Ashley Abbott was a little bit pulled in 30 different directions, but I think I think she did a good job. I think Charleroi did a great job of hosting the event. It went really well.
Yeah.
Of course, thank you to all the sponsors. I know Alex, shouted them out constantly during the broadcast. B Graphics or the T-shirts. I think it was a great event. I would prefer maybe to keep it at Charleroi next year. But
absolutely.
We will see how that goes. I think the setup, like I said, the gym setup was really good. But, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully we can get back there. And it may, maybe not at the beginning of the season, maybe later in the season. We'll see. It's things that, after we do this event every year, we sit down and we talk about it, at least me and Naz do, and we, try to hammer out some logistical things that may have happened. So we'll see what the overall outcome of it was, and go from there and see what, if any, changes need to be made. So
yeah.
But other than that, I thought it was a good weekend.
Yep, third annual MVI Shootout Classic now in the rearview mirror. We look toward the rest of the season. Of course, a couple games early on here this week. Had a few Monday that we did not cover just because way games, things like that. But last night we were out, and you got to see the Elizabeth Forward Warriors get a nice victory over the Trinity Hillers.
I did. Coach Yarton doing a great job over there, and I think that this game really epitomized what he wants the Warriors to be under his leadership. It was a great team game. Alyssa Terza, obviously, one of the big stars for EF, didn't do a lot of scoring. I think she finished with 8 points. But Chloe Zombeck picked up the slack. She played a great game. She was their primary ball handler most of the time. She did a great job leading the team on the floor. She finished with 19 points. Second year in a row, actually, that Elizabeth Forward has beaten Trinity now. They beat them last year down at up on the hill. So congratulations to Coach Yart. He did a great job. I think it was just a matter, when I talked to him, the difference in the game was rebounding. Early on in the first half, Trinity just dominated the boards. And overall in the game, they had an advantage. But in the second half, EF was able to get those rebounds. They did a better job of putting a body on the girls and, boxing out, getting the rebounds, and getting into transition a little bit better. Big plays. Michelle Jellison was 0 for 4 from three-point range, finally hits one to tie the game. And then Mia Sesterik had 2 big steals and layups on the other end. They went up. They tied the game, then took the lead with a little under 4 minutes to go, and they were able to hold on, got big baskets, big free throws when they needed them. So, anytime you can beat a program like Trinity, it really sets a tone. And I think they kind of put everybody in their section on notice a little bit.
Yeah.
That, despite having a new coach, there's not going to be a drop-off this year.
Right. And I think Noah Yarton did learn a very important lesson. Never show disappointment in front of Mike Darnay. Something that I think coaches learn the hard way, but lesson learned, and I think he'll maybe keep his composure a little bit more.
I think I saw in our group text, I think that is now the contact photo for Bria Rathway's phone. It is,
and I think that's amazing. So well done, Bria, on that one. And Yart's probably just going to, act a little more excited at every single moment, regardless of what happens in a game when Mike Darnay is shooting it. But in other action, I got to go down to one of my favorite venues to cover high school basketball, the Nene Campbell Gymnasium. Always good to go down to McKeesport and see the girls basketball team in action. And the Tigers did not disappoint. Just a stingy defensive effort for McKeesport as they get a big victory. Kind of an early season statement win for McKeesport team that expects to obviously compete in Class 5A. They're one of the better teams in that classification, and especially with the amount of senior leadership that they have. All 5 of their starters and their first 2 players off the bench, all seniors with valuable experience in the state playoffs and the WPIL playoffs. But they get a 56-37 win over the defending runner-ups in both the WPIAL and PIAA in the Blackhawk Cougars. But this was a big win for McKeesport early in the season. Forced 27 turnovers, limited Elena Fassetti to only 15 points, 5 in the second half. And then you look at what Brooke Evans was able to do, 17 points for her, 14 for Maddie Hertzler. I believe Rachel Manfredo had 8 in this one, so you didn't really need her to do a ton. Obviously one of McKeesport's leading scorers. But this seemed like a total team effort. No matter who was on the floor, you look at the 5 starters with Hertzler, Cherepko, Evans, Manfredo, and Kaylee Charles, and then 3 coming off the bench with Savannah Blosser, and then the 2 Millers and Maddie and Jessica Miller. Everybody that was on the floor for McKeesport played a role, whether it was on defense, whether it was coming up with points. Everybody played a role and had a valuable part of this victory. And McKeesport they're looking pretty good here with a 3-0 start, and they should be one of the teams to beat over in 5A.
Especially with everything Oakland Catholic lost. That was the team that kind of, man, we can't get over the hump. And they should have, Jose. You were with me, I believe, last year, if I'm not mistaken. We were at Gateway for that semifinal.
I think I covered every single one of those.
I was pretty sure you were there as well. And I mean, it was just one of those, you just kept thinking, they're going to pull ahead and they're going to finish this. And just they never could. And now that you've lost so much off that Oakland Catholic team from last year, and there's not a team, I think you can say almost any side that's going to be as experienced as this McKeesport Tigers, or at least very few that can rival their experience they have on the floor.
Especially after what they experienced the senior class as sophomores, making the run that they did.
Knocking off a very good Trinity team at that time.
Right, through the WPIL playoffs, through the state playoffs. I mean, these kids are battle tested now that they're seniors, and they know what they want, they know what to expect, if this has got to be the year for the McKeesport Tigers for sure. And I think being able to get an early season win like this and winning convincingly by almost 20 points against a Blackhawk team that's very good. I mean, Elena Fassetti is one of the best players in Class 4A.
I mean, they always have some fantastic shooters off that. Like, I go back to, a while back when they had Mackenzie Amelia there. She was one of the best shooters in the year. And then you had 2-3 girls that kept coming in right after her that could just absolutely light it up for Blackhawk. And, I mean, they always have talent, and they always have a big-time shooter and scorer on that roster.
Yeah, and McKeesport's defense was just suffocating. I mean, I think Blackhawk only scored 12 points combined in the middle quarters. I mean, when you're able to hold a team like that to that type of offensive output, through a couple of quarters, because it was a 16-15 game after one quarter. But McKeesport was able to lock down on defense. I talked to Brooke Evans and Maddie Hertzler after the game, and they said, they did learn a little bit from that meeting last year when Blackhawk beat them by 3, third game of the season. It was actually a year ago today. They learned, just who the shooters were. They learned kind of who to kind of pinpoint, and they executed to perfection last night. So big early season victory for the McKeesport Tigers. Adam Brewer was over having the California Best Center game, 74-64 win for Best Center.
Didn't Tharp have like 40 in that game?
Yeah, Brody Tharp with a 40-piece against the Trojans. Jonas Susan and Santina Revi each with 12 points. Jaquise Stearns led the way with 18 for California. Noah Neal grabbed 15. Vinny Manzella with 14. Caden Monticelli with 10. So balanced scoring there for the California Trojans as they get 4 in double figures, but are unable to come away with the victory. Kind of go through the roundup here from today's paper from last night. Had a lot of games going on last night. Very lengthy roundup, the first of, I'm sure, many here for the winter season. But Sarah Catholic with a victory. The Charleroi girls remain unbeaten with a 55-46 win over SA. Abby Jennis led the way with 18 for Sarah, 15 for Bree Battles, 11 for Riley Allball, who very happy to see her back on the floor after her injury last season. For Charleroi, Bella Corrado with 23 for the Cougars, Cameron Musser with 15, Riley Jones with 10. Talking a little bit about that, we know that Bella is going to have to score 20 plus.
The quest for 1,000.
It's ongoing.
Sorry, Chad.
She's kind of off.
Chad's just going to kill you now.
I'm waiting for the text.
We asked Chad how many she needs. He said 995, which is not true. She needs less than that. But we know that she's going to have to come up big like she did last night with McKenna DeYounger out. But Cameron Musser early in the season has been pretty solid. Some double figures performances from her. Do we feel like that's kind of something that Charleroi can continuously get? Do we get it?
There it is.
Do we feel like that's something that Charleroi will continue to get? Do we feel like they're going to get the secondary scoring that they need?
If they're going to be successful, they better. And right now they're getting it. It's quite a change because, Bella's now running the point.
Right.
So, she's going to need those other girls to score, but the quest is over. But, so I think that's always the key.
Yeah.
Is you have to have that secondary scoring. No matter what level of basketball you're at, you're going to have your 1 or 2 stars, but you need the other girls to pitch in. So for Bella, it's going to be a matter of can she create shots for herself off the dribble, but also distribute to where those other girls have the chance. And so far, they're doing it. I mean, how awesome was it for them? Especially Coach Zanowski and Bella and, assistant coach Kevin Parker to go into Manessa and win that tournament. When, everybody, I'm sure Monessen thought for sure they were going to win both games of that tournament and take the title home, but they didn't. Charleroi kind of spoiled that party. So, I think that was kind of like a little bit of a statement that they made there that say, hey, we're not totally out of this. I mean, again, another tough section, though. I mean, South Park's going to be pretty decent team with Coach Loftus in his second year there. But, they're off to a good start. And once you get that momentum rolling, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think it's very encouraging to see, players stepping up, to see Cameron Musser coming up big the first few games. If you can continue to get that from her, because we know that she's capable of having, good offensive performances. That's big. Riley Jones getting her back as an offensive contributor is going to be huge as well. So, this is still a Charleroi team that's got some talent. So definitely can't count them out. And credit to Bobby Zainowski for getting the Cougars out to a 3-0 start. Another team that's out to a 3-0 start also goes by the name of the Cougars in the Yacht Cougars, a 57-11 victory over East Allegheny last night. Haley Bach with 21 points, Autumn Matthews with 16. Also had to mention with South Allegheny in that loss to Charleroi, Gabby Jackson with a team-high 15 points. Rounding through some of the other scores, Brownsville 66-41 over Fraser. Clairton 58-8 over Westinghouse. Ayanna Wade with a 30-piece.
I thought you were going to say 58.
I mean, they actually had two in double figures, so some balance there.
That's more progress. It's not Ayanna scoring.
It's not just Ayanna
she's
scoring.
She's still dropping her 30.
She's still scoring plenty of points, but got to give a shout out to Jemiah Childs, who had 11 to help Clairton get that victory as well. Sarah Catholic 72-71 on the boys' side. They were outscored 40-38 in the second half, but they held on after leading by 3 at the end of the first half. Isaiah Petty with 28, Pete Burke 22, Owen Dombrowski with 15. The big three that's going to lead the way for them.
That's just one of those things, that team, they got to start figuring it out, who's going to kind of orchestrate everything. Because obviously you had Elijah Ward last year. You had Joey DeMoss take a lot of pressure off. Well, now there's more pressure on Petty. He has to be the primary ball handler, and more pressure on Dombrowski kind of taking over in that role of Joey DeMoss, which gave Dombrowski so much more room to operate last year with Joey on the floor.
And I think a lot of pressure on Pete Burke to be an instrumental part. I feel like
we saw that in Game 2 of the Shootout Classic.
Right, and I feel like, in the past couple years, he hasn't had to be one of those guys. He didn't really have to put a lot of pressure on himself, but I think Sarah needs him to be that type of scorer.
Yeah.
22 points for him. That's pretty big. So
that's back-to-back 20-point games for Burke, too.
Yeah, they need him to be that big offensive contributor if they're going to want to succeed.
And I think another guy you're going to look at by the end of the year is Graham coming off the bench, that freshman. He's going to be very talented and very pivotal in how far they're able to go as a unit for the Sarah Catholic Eagles, who Jose, I don't know if you saw the special patches on the jersey this season.
Did not.
I did see that.
So they got the patches for Sam, and they put that on the floor. So first home game since that in that gym for the boys basketball team. So they'll have some memorial patches on the jerseys this year.
And awesome to see the design on the court that they put for Sam, too. That was pretty cool. So Sarah Catholic, a 2-1 start to the season with their victory over Seton LaSalle. Bell Vernon gets in the win column, 27 from Zion Moore. Tommy Davis had a double-double. He and Trevor Kovac each with 15 points. I think
6
Davis,
blocks,
too.
Davis
had 6 blocks as well, which was pretty big for him. So
and I thought Tommy looked good against South Allegheny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think and he's starting to get confidence, which is like the best thing to see is that's where Tommy Davis's issue was. He wasn't confident. Well, now he's confident in showing. And then if you can get this consistent scoring from these three, and then you add in the Wade brothers, it looks like maybe Anthony Cruz is going to play some basketball. I mean, he was at the Shootout Classic on the bench with the Wade brothers on Saturday. So, if you get those guys back and Zion distributing the ball like he's been able to do, along with scoring, it's going to be a dangerous Bell Vernon team again.
Yeah, Bell Vernon with a big victory over Steel Valley. Of course, a different Steel Valley team as they start 0-3, of course.
No Mackay Valentine.
Yeah, kind of the post-Mackay Valentine era now for the Ironmen. Thomas Jefferson moves to 3-0 with a 78-67 win. We finally saw Evan Berger and Noah Prosser come out and have some big-time performances, combined for 49 points, 32 for Berger, 17 for Prosser in that victory. And we kind of see TJ through the first few games. Berger and Prosser haven't had those big offensive performances, but they really don't need to with all the depth that they have. But always encouraging to see these two have those types of showings here like they did against
I think
Baldwin.
they'll need to Friday. I mean, that's
I think anybody who's playing Uniontown has to have
Grooms, Mickley, Braxton, Winfrey, Berger, Prosser, Evans on the other side. That's going to be a fantastic game.
And I believe we will have coverage of that.
We'll be there.
I'm MVI Live.
I am very much looking forward to that game. That is going to be a lot of fun to cover. Obviously, always fun getting to see the Uniontown kids. We get to see them all summer long, and of course, being in the same section as Bell Vernon and Elizabeth Ford makes it a lot of fun to get to cover them, and getting to watch them play Thomas Jefferson at TJ. I think that's going to be a fantastic matchup between those two schools, especially if you get into a situation where either Grooms or Winfrey and Prosser just trade in triples and we're just back and forth. I think that's the type of game you're in for, maybe one of those high 70 scoring affairs between those two schools.
Yeah, Winfrey and Prosser, Summer League teammates, so we'll be going head-to-head on Friday. We'll have a little bit more about our MVI Live schedule here in a minute, but it's talking about balance. 5 players in double figures for South Allegheny as they remain unbeaten with a lopsided win over Albert Gallatin. Michael Mahalski with 20 points, Drew Cook with 18, Cam Epps at 13, and then Justin Beatty and Shane Rudberg both with 12. And guys, we've talked about this SA team. Obviously, different team without Bryce Epps, but man, the amount of talent that they have. We saw Jakowski have a big performance over the weekend. He's their other starter, but then Shane Rudberg coming off the bench having 12 points last night. This is an SA team that they might not be the same team that they've maybe had in the past. I mean, you have some different faces and things like that, but. In a sense, it is the same team because this is still a program that is built on success and the high expectations, and that's really what SA has this year.
They still don't have Camden Lewis back either, and he's going to be a big part of that. I think Drew Cook's done an excellent job. Obviously, you're never going to have one player come in and replace a Bryce Epps. But Drew Cook's been able to allow Cam to continue to play the same game, kind of that energizer bunny defensively, a fantastic three-point shooter, and then Drew Cooks just looked fantastic for them. And then you add in the skill of Michael Mahalski, Josh Jakowski. We got to see what he did all summer long. Then you're going to have Camden Lewis come back. Shane Rudberg's been a nice piece off the bench for them. And I think it's, same old for South Allegheny, who actually have a pretty tough non-conference schedule coming up next week with both Washington and McKeesport at home on Tuesday, and then on the road on, I believe, Friday against McKeesport. So a couple of tough non-conference games coming up for this South Allegheny team, and it's really, I think, going to be a good test to see where they are and what they have to do to continue to improve themselves throughout the course of this season. Yeah,
I wanted to talk to you guys, too, about another team that we mentioned, Uniontown, a team that's in Uniontown section that, kind of has looked, obviously they played TJ their first game in the Shootout Classic. Last night they get a 66-58 win over Plum in overtime, 15-7 in the overtime period. The Elizabeth Ford Warriors, led by Tyler Basic, 23 points last night, 21 from Isaiah Turner. Is this an EF team that we think is going to be, they don't have Charlie Niggett, they don't have Drew Cook, but is this a EF team that we think can, be a playoff team once again with the talent they got here?
I'd be shocked almost if they aren't, just for the pure fact I don't see LH making the playoffs this year. And, it could be very well come down to LH and EF for that final spot, because I think Southmoreland sneaks back into the playoffs for a while. They still have Kiefer and Keffer, so that's a really dynamic two to come in there. And I think you have Uniontown as the clear number one. I think Bell Vernon with Zion, and once you get everyone back, will be the number 2 out of that. But then you have, I think, those final couple spots. Can EF get one back? And if Basic continues to develop, I think very much so, especially that Charlie Mealive's playing as well is going to add so much more to not just Turner and Basic having to carry the offense. You have Mealive in there as well to help on the glass, on the offense, and then, I think Southmoreland are going to be fighting for that in that final third and fourth spot as well inside the playoffs. And I think it's, again, tough sledding for LH without DeShields, without Gallagher now, and that post-life is no fun for them.
Yeah, and can't forget about Cy Herschelroth and what he has brought to Elizabeth Forward. But
especially coming back when, no one thought he was going to. He, for the longest time, thought he was going to stick with baseball only.
Right. But it seems like this is an EF team that can make some noise. You got any thoughts, Jeremy?
No.
Okay.
Jeremy looks tired.
I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna surprise some people, and don't forget, Bell Vernon had everybody last year, and EF upset them in one of their
that was
two
Drew
meetings.
Cook went off in that game.
So I think they're about where they were last year, but I think that they're going to be. I agree. I don't think Laurel Highlands is. I mean, they still got some good ball players up there, but
absolutely.
I think this section's just a lot. For a team that's trying to start over without its stars. So, you mentioned, I think Southmoreland's still very beatable, but you got to get a hand up in Kiefer's face.
Yeah.
Or Keffer. One of those two, whatever one stands outside and buries the
Jeremy
three-pointers.
He has no
Kiefer,
idea which
Keffer,
one's which.
Henson, Jartman, it's all those. But
here's you have to, I think the big thing for you.
You have to defend it.
Well, if you're EF, you have to beat Southmoreland in the
Yes.
first meeting.
Yes.
You have to beat them in the first meeting. And, okay, if you lose them the second time around, it's a little different. But if you get that first win against Southmoreland, that takes so much pressure off you for that second meeting. And I think it can kind of really snowball you into the right direction if you're Elizabeth Forward. I mean, it's one of those things. We said it in football, Kiefer's going to find Keffer one time for the big deep ball. Kiefer's going to get his. Ty Keffer's going to get his 20-plus points per game. That's what he does. He's a 1,000-point scorer. He gets around 20, 21 a game. So you're going to have to defend that. Kiefer as well. And then you have Ronnie Collins. You have Elliot Primus, who I imagine is going to see the floor more this year. All those Fraser Connection kids out at Southmoreland. And, they're not going to be an easy out. But I still think EF can finish in that third spot. And I think they'll be able to bump a spot up inside the playoffs this year, inside the section after, being the fourth team out of that section last year.
What's going to be key for the Warriors is staying healthy.
Absolutely.
Last year, that was a big thing, something that I think Coach Nolan Larry learned from last year. Had a lot of expectations with the talent, but, over the course of a long season, things happen. And, I know he said he was kind of trying to temper his expectations, kind of take things one game at a time.
Right.
And so far, so good. I mean, I think he even took nothing but positives from the loss to Thomas Jefferson in the Shootout Classic, a close game at halftime, and then TJ
tied at the half, I believe. Yeah,
TJ just made shots, and it wasn't really anything that EF didn't do. I thought they played a really solid game, for 32 minutes, but it was just a matter of TJ making shots there in the second half. But through two games, this Elizabeth Forward team has looked pretty good.
And look at this too. This is the big difference. You talked about injuries last year. Yeah, absolutely, that was big for Elizabeth Forward. But it wasn't just mid-season injuries. You got to points in the season where coming into that season to start, you thought your starters were going to be Makai Daniels, who didn't play a game for them last year.
Right.
Charlie Mealive, who played one game for them last year in the playoffs because he missed it with an injury. You thought Turner was going to be a starter. He did start and started all year for the Warriors. You thought you were going to have Zach Boyd, and then you weren't going to have Zach Boyd. Then you did have Zach Boyd.
Right.
I mean, you just didn't know what you actually had there with – you thought you had Chris Climbs. And, I mean, now you kind of knew coming in, okay, we don't have these guys. Obviously there's no more Makai Daniels. Niggett's not going to play this year. We know that coming in. Mealive's not going to play. Well, there's the surprise. He is playing. So instead of surprise guys not being in their lineup, they get some surprises in a good way, and they were prepared to kind of not have these guys, unlike last year when it was just like, oh, yeah, these guys aren't going to be able to play now for a season.
Yeah, and a lot of just last year was definitely a crazy first year for Coach Nolan Larry. But
I do not envy him on that at all.
Yeah, so definitely a little more clarity coming into the season. Obviously a nice surprise to see Charlie Mealive back out there for his team. Going to take some time, I'm sure, for Charlie to kind of get acclimated to things once again on the court. But good start here for the Elizabeth Forward Warriors as we continue through our roundup Tara Crosby with a 30-point performance
He's not bad.
In Yock's 51-41 win over South Park. Not a bad start for him. 11 for Austin Matthews. Bentworth on the losing end of a 42-29 game against Jefferson Morgan. Monessen 56-54 over Charleroi. And then a couple of swimming results from last night. Elizabeth Forward's boys and girls swimming teams.
Elizabeth Ford swimming.
We got to commend you. I mean, you guys.
You are everything we dream about when it comes to reporting
you have
swimming.
spoiled us, and we don't deserve it. We don't deserve your love, but we love it. Thank you so much for sending, I believe it's Sydney Toth who sends it.
Yes.
She sent an entire roundup.
We didn't have to.
We barely had to
copy paste in the paper.
I had to edit a little bit just to how we do it, but it was practically perfect. So thank you so much for that. We try to get out to as many swimming events during the season as we can, but it just doesn't happen with our short staff.
What you're saying here, Jose, is every other school ask her what she does, and that's how you need to be sending them stuff.
See, it's not even that. I literally sent exactly what we need.
And one person listened.
And one out of the 14 times 2, 28 teams listened. Now,
usually,
no, wait. We got to clear this up.
Jeremy's here to tick people off again.
Everything is suitable the way we're getting it now. The thing that wrestling coaches jump on board with them swimming coaches. Mm-hmm. We got to get the wrestling results in. I mean, I know there were tournaments over the weekend. There's matches on Wednesday. Let's get those results to the newspaper.
Right.
We are literally a staff of 2. We're minimal amount of wrestling matches we're going to be able to make it to. We might.
But it doesn't mean we don't.
You're more likely to see a photographer, though, so we need those results so we can run the pictures and everything.
And that doesn't mean we still want to highlight your athletes, regardless of if we're there or not.
We're not ignoring you guys, and we get to the postseason tournaments the best we can as well. But, we're very appreciative of Sydney helping us out. I mean, and she was a swimmer, so she knows, that important is that recognition is important to those kids. And
heck, I'm halfway tempted to be like, hey, you want to start being a stringer for us?
Well,
her rating's pretty solid.
Don't worry, you're going to get your one swimming meet in this year. So we appreciate it.
Big swimming guy,
the toughest thing, is, and it's been minimal. It's really hard to decipher. Like when we get back from games, like last night, what time did you get back to your house, to your desk?
I don't know.
10 o'clock?
9:30,
10. By the time you're done writing 10 o'clock.
I wasn't done with the roundup and box scores till like 11.
Okay.
I mean, we were past our deadline.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. It's hard because it's been very minimal, but when we just send pictures of the scorebook in, if they're not totaled up, we don't have the time to, go through and decipher them because we're all at games doing, covering those games. So please go by the template. Your AD has it. If you need it, go see your AD or ask them to forward it to you. Everything we need is in there, how we configure everything, all the pertinent information we needed. But that's it.
But
in rant.
Shout out
it's not even a rant. It's not even a rant. It's
not a rant.
It's a public service announcement.
Yes.
Please support your Valley sports guys. We appreciate it.
Please. But shout out to Sydney Toth. Thank you very much for sending in basically a perfect roundup piece. I mean,
you're the real MVP.
I
Sid.
didn't really have to do anything to it. It was very well done, and we appreciate it. So, but Elizabeth Forward, boys and girls, both with victories over Brentwood. Belle Vernon, obviously their results are perfect every time they send them into.
Well, last night was they gave us first names.
Yes,
we didn't. I did ask Coach Humbert for the official roster, so we had first names. The first result wasn't easy to do because there weren't first names because I know there's been a lot of turnover, graduations and stuff, little sisters, little brothers. So we want to make sure we have the right names. So we appreciate the first names in the reports as well.
Honestly, people might have enjoyed reading Sydney's recap more than my Belle Vernon one,
probably.
To be honest. So, that's our roundup for today. If you haven't picked up a copy of today's newspaper with all that we just covered, be sure to pick up a copy. And as we'll continue to have coverage of local high school sports as we get into the winter sports season. Tonight, not a ton going on. Have I think 2 basketball games. We have some wrestling matches. But I'll be heading over to California to see the Trojans season opener against West Green. So,
I'll send you to that tonight?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'll be there.
Did I send myself anywhere tonight?
No, you did not.
Okay. I'm trying to get the
There's one other
PIAA story done.
There's one other game, but I think it's away.
I'll be news to Chad. I'll be at the Bell Vernon, California game tomorrow, in which our 6th grade Metro team will be playing against Ricky Taberski's 5th grade team at halftime of that game.
Oh, interesting.
I'm trying to get this PIAA story done. I mean, I know we've seen the Trib and the Post Gazette, and everybody's had that story, but I'm literally trying to break it down into, say Bell Vernon. Here is the golf, wrestling, basketball, football. This is where your classifications fall. So it's just a lot of information to go through.
Yeah.
On top of putting together a basketball tab in 6 days and the tournament.
There's a lot of
so
things
just
going on.
bear with us. I will break down all of our schools' numbers and not break down the numbers, but at least tell you where your schools are going to be playing next year. Big highlights: Bell Vernon girls soccer going down to 2A. Charleroi girls soccer moving up to 2A, so we'll probably see them in the same section next year. Right now, Charleroi football 3A, but supposedly
we'll see what happens with that.
There's some controversy. There was a clerical error. Ringgold still in 4A. I know there was some talk maybe they would go down. That's not going to happen. So. Look for Bell Vernon football back to 4A. So you might see that conference again with McKeesport, Bell Vernon, Ringgold, TJ, all in the same conference again, which we love because that knocks out 2 of our teams every week. There's a little bit of movement. Fraser softball, I think we're going to 2A.
2A, yep.
Fraser volleyball still in 1A. There's a lot of movement, so it's just a matter of having time without barking dogs, an annoying preteen, and stuff going over everything to go through the numbers and the paperwork. So we're getting there.
Yeah.
Hopefully tonight.
We'll have coverage of California West Green. We'll have that story coming up in the Mon Valley Independent tomorrow. As Jeremy said, he'll be over at Bell Vernon, California. I'll have coverage of Elizabeth Ford Sarah Catholic, which should be a very exciting matchup tomorrow. And then Friday, I'm hitting the road. And heading up to Mechanicsburg, of course.
The cucumber patch?
Yes, I'm going to go, get some cucumbers, I guess. I mean, God, why do you
that
look Hershey?
That can take a turn.
So very excited to head up to Mechanicsburg on Friday. Me and Mike Darnay will be heading up there for coverage of the state championship game, Bell Vernon versus Northwestern Lehigh on Saturday, 1 p.m. for the Class 3A title. Excited to get a road trip going, and this will be my third state championship that I've covered. So
Coach Humbert's going to take some time at 9 a.m. tomorrow to talk to me about
for a
preview story. So we'll have that probably for Friday's paper, just because there's going to be a lot going on Friday night, obviously with basketball and stuff. So we want to give, obviously the Leopards deserve to have that top of the fold on Friday's paper or something.
Sure.
But and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be heading out that way.
Yeah.
Let's get into that real quick.
Yeah.
6 Western Pennsylvania teams playing for titles, if you count Westinghouse in 2A. But man, those tasks are tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you got. I think Aliquippa beats Dallas in 4A.
I think Fort Cherry wins it all.
I like Fort Cherry. That Steel High team played Canavan, and beat them. But I think I think Fort Cherry can.
It was the other day that I realized Matt Sieg's only a sophomore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think I read he's accounted for 72 touchdowns or something this year.
And the wild thing about Fort Cherry is it's close. They may be losing by 5 or 6. Next thing you know, they're up by 20.
Yeah, because Matt Sieg runs for 3 touchdowns.
Well, yeah, but the thing is,
I
was talking to my buddy Bob, who's the baseball coach at Fort Cherry, and
Sieg
is obviously a very good baseball player as well. I think he plays basketball too. Does he play basketball?
I don't know.
They're a pretty good basketball team as well. But I was talking to him about Matt, and the thing is, as good as he is and as instrumental he's done in winning a WPIAL title, getting them to the state championship game, it's not a typical Class A situation where you got one superstar player. I mean, that whole team is loaded up, and he just kind of guides the way, and he does a lot, obviously. He throws, he runs, but they got plenty of other weapons. We saw in the Whitfield Championship game, I forget the guy's name, Cardillo or something. He threw a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
On a halfback option play. So, I think they got a really good shot of bringing a state title to Fort Cherry.
Me too. But yeah, let's talk about the Leps. Obviously a big victory this past week against Hickory, very convincing win. But it seems like this Bell Vernon team is kind of clicking on all cylinders right now, scoring a ton. Doesn't matter who is finding the end zone. There are multiple guys who are capable of it, and this Bell Vernon defense continues to play lights out. Yeah,
I think it's hard to get a read on these other teams. Obviously, we don't know them as well, but right. I just think there is not Northwestern Lehigh, they beat Scranton Prep, who beat Newman Goretti, who, Bell Vernon beat in last year's championship game. But I still don't think there's the competition anywhere else that you face in the Whitfield.
Right. I just don't think the size seemed to be there compared to, what we've seen with Bell Vernon and some of the size they've had to go up against.
You look at it, too, they're coming into the state championship game. Most of these kids were playing in that game a year ago. Yeah. They know what to expect now coming in.
I think that gives them an advantage. I think that's what gives them this advantage. I know our buddy Bill Beckner from the Trib wrote a story about their goal line stand that was in their paper today. Yeah. But I think the overall theme of that story is like what we just said. I think being there is, it's not new for them this year. So I think that really gives them an advantage. And, we're all pretty close with Matt Humbert. We all know how he's like OCD about his planning and his, there is no team that prepares, I think, as well as Bell Vernon does, because he could delegate. I mean, let's be honest, they got 19 coaches on the team pretty much.
And 19 who are capable of being head coaches.
And they're all responsible for their just little piece of their world.
Yeah.
But you got Matt doing the you got Matt doing the offense, and then you got Brett Barish, who's like a mastermind on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's another place where Bell Vernon has an advantage is with Coach Barish.
Yeah, just the way you look at what the way that they played that Whitfield championship game, like that just epitomizes how this team wants to play. And I just ever since then, seeing how they played against Hickory, and now kind of coming into the state championship game, I just don't see them playing any less than that, and I don't see their defense really having many issues in shutting a team down. Especially like I said, you look at last year what they experienced in that game against Newman Goretti. If they can get through that and come away with a close victory like they did last year, who's to say that they aren't battle tested enough to do it again?
I don't necessarily think they're going to have to, though. Personally,
I don't either, because I think that offensively they as of late, they've been able to really just click in every single way. It doesn't matter who has the ball in their hands. Quentin Martin, whether he's scoring a touchdown or not, they have guys like Cole Doppelhauer, they got Jay Jedico, they got Anthony Cruz, Braden Locks, scored 3 touchdowns in the Whitfield championship game. I mean, you have just so many different offensive weapons that I think they're going to score way more points than they did last year. But this defense is battle-tested for those situations where if you need it to come down to defense, they have it on lock.
And here's the thing. I was keeping tabs on that Wyomissing Western Lehigh game when we were at the shootout on Friday. And obviously Wyomissing was up big, but here's the difference. Wyomissing, they were trying to push Lehigh, and they were successful pushing them around in the trenches in the beginning of that game, but it appeared they wore out. That line gave out. Well, here's the thing.
I don't see Bell Vernon.
Bell Vernon's line's not going to give out and not going to wear out because it's a constant rotation.
Right.
It's more like a college defensive line than it is a high school, because you have Locks, you have Johnson on the outside, you have Dom Galani, you had that big play inside the WPIO championship on the outside. Then you have Breyer, you have all these guys, Dane Levi. And it's just a constant rotation. You only need 4 guys out there, and Bell Vernon can probably go about 8 deep on that defensive line with talent.
Which is good, because most of these guys, Locks obviously is the quarterback playing both sides, big role on both sides of the ball. So you need guys to come in and give him a little bit of a breather on the defensive side. And same with Aiden Johnson. He's been lining up at tight end offensively. So every once in a while he's going to need to take a step out on the defensive side. So. a lot of depth there for Bell Vernon that just allows them to be fresh for the entire
And if
game.
they get past that first level, don't forget, then you have
Lacarte.
Colton Lee, Adam Lacarte, and that's the
and
thing.
Tanner Moody, the leading tackler on this team.
Moody's. I mean, they're just unbelievable.
Tanner Moody might be. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree. Is he the most underrated part of this defense? Is he a guy who's maybe like goes under the radar
a little
bit?
So, because I think you really look at the defensive line, then you look at Martin and Lacarte in the secondary, and I think not just Tanner Moody, I think Colton Lee and Alonzo Wade as well.
Yeah,
because
Wade had a big interception.
That whole
in
linebacking unit, those
three
three of those four linebackers, even Cole Doppelauer when he's in the middle there. But I mean, you just see a lot of talent in that middle linebacker and outside linebacker position that kind of gets overshadowed because of how good the defensive line is and how good the secondary is. But that linebacking crew is just as good, if not better, because, I mean, just the way Bell Vernon's able to play.
Yeah, I think that's overall what it is it's just, you know, and we've seen it offensively, and it goes the same for defensively. It's just there's so much talent and so many weapons, you know. When's the last time Quentin Martin had more than 15 carries in a game? I don't think he's had more than 15 all season.
No.
You know, so he's fresh. You know, Doppelhauer's, I mean, I don't know
He's
about
a
you
wrestler.
guys, but, well, not even that. But
I mean, which makes
I
him
think
incredible.
He's a tough kid.
I think he's our breakthrough player of the year.
No, I agree.
I mean,
so too.
because he just burst. I mean, he's a junior, but he just burst onto
You've
the
never
scene.
seen it before.
Right.
Besides in garbage time. And the reason I said wrestler with him, like, if you watch
You
some of
can't
these,
bring him down.
Doppelauer has three guys around him, uses that to propel him into the end zone for another 30 yards, and it's just like, that's unbelievable. And Bell Vernon's had some of those talented football wrestlers, and, you know, this is just that next wave. I mean, of course, you had Cole Waitman, who was one of them. Him and Finnery, of course, always went out for state titles. But, I mean, you have guys that just know how to have control of their body and control of their center of gravity to make themselves so much more lethal. And when you have Doppelauer, who's probably your fourth running back, being as good as he is, and I mean, I don't think you can call him the fourth running back anymore
I think
at all.
he's your top running back.
I really do.
Honestly, I think Q is more of an athlete. He's
Jedico's kind of moved to H-back.
Right, and, you know, you line
Cruz is more of a wide receiver now.
Right, and you're putting Quentin in the slot. I mean, you know, I mean, they're 1A and 1B at running back. I mean, I don't think he's going to have 200 yards, but, you know, Doppelauer is just on the outside of having a 1,000-yard season.
I think you can give a legitimate argument over him being the most valuable player on this team.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Because it opens up everybody else to do other things. It allows Quentin Martin to, you know, go out on the side and be, you know, line up at wide receiver. Right. It allows Cruz to do the same. You know, it doesn't put as much pressure on Jake Jedico, who, you know, at times this season has, you know, been banged up. You know, so I would be able to argue that, you know, Doppelauer has been the most valuable asset on this team, which is pretty impressive.
Oh, absolutely. He's been. I don't think anyone saw, like, I saw Doppelauer having 500-plus yards this season, not being meaningful yards.
Right.
Being in those games where they're up big.
He's playing the entire fourth quarter, and he's going to get 100 yards in the fourth quarter against the Greensburg-Salem, against the Southmoreland. No, he is, from the get-go, a instrumental part of this offense, and he's just, I mean, both sides of the ball. And I don't think anyone truly saw the type of breakout that he's had this year coming, maybe besides inside that Leopard locker room.
Right. But excited to see what Cole Doppelauer and this Leopards team can do this weekend. Saturday, 1 p.m., 3A championship game, Bell Vernon versus Northwestern Lehigh. Myself and Mike Darnay will be there at Cumberland Valley High School for full coverage of Bell Vernon's quest for a second straight state championship. So be sure to follow us on social media. We'll have full coverage of that and have all the updates and everything like that. So,
yeah.
But
I got one more for you guys.
Let's
Backtrack a little bit. Do we have Bleacher Creature Day before we get to that?
We do have.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that. But doubling back a little bit to basketball, what are your thoughts of the new foul rule and kind of our first taste of it, that 5 fouls per quarter?
I like it a lot too, and it's taken some getting used to through the first few games because
it's helping the flow of the game.
It is. And last night they got to 5 fouls, and I was incredibly confused, not remembering the rule. But I like it. I think it's an incentive to be a little more cautious and a little more just aware of,
And that's the big thing.
Yeah, I like that part.
Because, like, through game 1 and 2 of the shootout, I absolutely hated it. And, like, I've done games with it before because I don't think the players were in that mindset yet. And then it's like, okay, by day 2 or even halfway through day 1, we even started to see, like, players are more conscientious and you're not getting to that 5 fouls 2 minutes into a game. It feels like it's like, okay, we really can cost ourselves a game early on by sending a team to the line for 2 shots for the entirety of 5 minutes and a half now.
Yeah.
So I think with players realizing that, it helps a lot.
Right, and we had an incident last night. It didn't affect anything, but the scoreboard operator didn't change the fouls after the first quarter. So in the second quarter, it showed EF is still having 4 fouls when they only had 2 because it resets after every quarter because it only has to go up to 5 now.
They had 2 in the first quarter?
They had I think 2 and then something like I think they had 4 in the first quarter, but then he didn't reset it.
Gotcha.
So the scoreboard read differently.
Right.
Yeah.
But and that's some of the things that even the scoreboard operators, you don't think about it, but they have to be well aware of it. And we saw at the shootout, Coach Hatton was explaining to his team, hey, I forgot they changed that rule. You only get 5 per quarter.
And that's what I think it was such a slow start with that, and now it seems like everyone's starting to get into the understanding.
And it's funny, when you think about it, even for, my 6th grade girls team, it takes a while before a team gets to 5 just in one quarter.
Yeah.
Depending on how the gameplay is. Now, like you said, that first game, it was a little slower just because of how sloppy and
3:30 game, everyone's antsy, you may a little more physical than you should be, and then we're shooting a lot of free throws.
Right, and I like the rule, and like we had experience with it last year covering the NCAA women down at Cal U, and I kind of got used to it then, and like I like it now that it's in.
And I think it stresses the
school.
Importance of free throw shooting.
Yes.
You get that opportunity early on, with another team having 5 fouls and you are shooting free throws. You got to make sure you're making them and make sure that you're capitalizing on those opportunities. I think that stressing free throw shooting, especially for kids in high school, I think it makes it even more important.
Listen, I was real disappointed on how bad our 6th grade team shoots free throws. But watching the high school game, they're ahead of the game. If they could get the 50%, which we shot in our last game, I'm so happy. I'm ecstatic. So free throw shooting is a lost art. It really is.
Yeah. But hopefully now with this new rule that, they'll kind of make it more of a priority in terms of capitalizing on those chances. I know last night, I think McKeesport got to 5 fouls in the first quarter. They had, I think, 3 quick ones called within the first minute and a half. Questionable at times, but it puts you in a tough situation from the get-go.
Anybody sees Coach Yarton today, ask him about his thoughts about the officiating last night.
I'm sure we don't even need his thoughts. I'm sure we can just look at that picture that Mike Darnay captured of him, and that's exactly how to describe it.
Both coaches were ticked last night.
Yeah, it was not happy. Neither of them were very happy. But we could jump into the bleacher creature here.
Yeah, let's hear from.
Our resident creature was floating around the MVI Shootout Classic.
Always lurking.
Always lurking. Speaking of, I think this week might be the Bleacher Creature T-shirt debut. I think they might be ready for us. So
now we're talking.
We will have very limited amount to purchase, but we'll get to the Bleacher Creature here. Here we go. I don't have a Bleacher Creature voice. So the Bleacher Creature was floating around the Charleroi gym this past weekend. Solid crowds, and except for a few uneducated / no clue on how coaching actually works comments, seemed like most people were well behaved. We had a few VIP vultures, but I guess you will have that. That's our next T-shirt. The VIP Vulture T-shirt. Anyway, let's just be sure to keep the parental expectations to what they should be. Little Jimmy with no left hand and a negative vertical isn't going to have a double-double every game. Negative vertical. Jesus. Okay, now let's get to this. Tattoos are not a bad thing when executed well. But, capital letters, but. There seems to be an epidemic of bad ideas, which lead to bad execution of said tattoos. I've noticed this over the past few years and have a few questions. Who is giving out these tattoos to these young kids, and why? I see one decent idea from time to time, but it's surrounded by more filler than actual good tattoo work. Looks like you have clouds from a Charmin wrapper on your arm with bad shading. It seems like some of these kids would just let anybody tattoo them so that they could have a sleeve. Not a good look, young people. Take your time and find someone with a good portfolio. Now get off my lawn. Until next time.
That's
very well said.
That last one's my line. I love saying get off my lawn.
Very, very well put, though, and I agree. I mean, not everybody can have the masterpiece like I have on my arm. But
you have a Duke tattoo on your leg.
That's on my leg. This one on my arm's good. It's
Yeah,
by a true artist. But anyway. But, yeah, so I agree with the bleacher creature.
You know, I'm tatted.
I think it's real funny because if I was like 16, I mean, because I did it. When I was 15, 16, I started talking about wanting a tattoo. Mm-hmm. And my dad just, like, laughed in my face. Like, and here's these parents just, yeah, go ahead. We'll pay for
Whatever.
it.
Who cares?
I got my first tattoo at the age of 28. So
mine was in
I didn't know
college.
Jose had a tattoo.
I do have a tattoo, yeah.
It's a tramp stamp.
It's
that doesn't surprise me.
It's a tribute tattoo. So how do you feel?
A tribute tramp stamp. Jose, come on.
Oh, Jose. Anyway.
You guys are going to feel really bad when I tell you what my tattoo is.
No, because I know what it is. It's fine. But anyway, let's we have anything else we want to talk about?
Not really.
Well, one thing, going back to basketball real quick, and, you know, something to contemplate here is, you know, lots of new coaches.
Yeah.
You know, lots of new coaches making their debuts. You got Berdovich over at Ringgold, Bobby Z from Charleroi, Yart doing a heck of a job at EF, Coach Greer at Charleroi. Hey, Jonathan Bassett Frazier got them girls 2-1. Started 2-0. Brownsville kind of took it to him last night, but you don't have a good day every day. But, you know, the question is posed, who's doing better? I think it's just a matter of what you got. You know, Charleroi, tough losses in the tournament, but it seems like you could see Coach Greer said in their preview story, you know, work in progress. I think there was some resistance to the change a little bit there. I don't know, you know, what all was entailed with that, but I think Charleroi is going to be on the right track. Good young nucleus. You know, we talked a little bit about the job Berdovich is doing at Ringgold. I mean, I think he not only walked into the toughest situation roster-wise, but the fact he got hired, 10 days before the season actually started, just like Yart. But, you know, he walked into a lot better situation roster-wise than Shane did. So,
you know what was the wildest thing out of, you know, we're on new coaches. The Charleroi inbound play for the first time in 100 years looks different underneath their own basket, trying to score off an inbound for the boys' side of things. Mm-hmm. It's just a weird look because everyone knew it was coming.
Hey, when you ain't running plays named Shazam and Baby Yoda, you can't talk to me. And Bacon. We got Bacon.
Woo!
Bacon's fire.
Everyone loves Bacon.
Yep. I got to give it up to assistant coach Chad Corrado with that one. It works, though. But, yeah, so, shout out to the new coaches.
Maybe Charleroi can run Bacon and get Bella 1,000.
Maybe. Yeah, there you go. Just throw it out. Listen, Bobby Z. Just bounce it off the girls' legs so you get the ball under the hoop and just let Bella run Bacon. And that quest to 1,000 will take form once again. But anyway, yeah, so shout out to all the new coaches out there doing their thing. Shout out girls Metro squad. Start our season against Latrobe on Saturday evening at 7 o'clock. Come take a look at the fire uniforms at the Bell Vernon girls game tomorrow night. Yeah. So, anything else? We got anything else, boys?
Nope.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The VIP Vulture shirts coming soon.
Noah Yarton.
Noah Yarton facial expression
hand palm shirts will be coming soon.
Yeah,
so.
the Noah Yarton face palm shirts. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
But, yeah, thank you all for tuning in.
It got to be a silhouette, though. I don't know if he has an NIL deal or not.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Valley Sports Guys podcast, episode number 93. Thank you to His Place Coffee Community and More in Monessen for allowing us to spout our nonsense as usual. But for Jeremy Salou, for Alex Lyons, I'm Jose Negron. We'll see you guys next Wednesday for another episode of the VSG podcast.